Breaking news tonight, closing arguments in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. The teen on trial for fatally shooting 2 people during unrest in Kenosha, Wisconsin last year. The prosecution saying Rittenhouse went looking for trouble. Rittenhouse's attorneys arguing he acted in self-defense. And the charge thrown out today by the judge. Our team is at the courthouse. Also tonight, bipartisan celebrations at the White House. President Biden signing his trillion-dollar infrastructure bill into law. Money for roads, bridges, and broadband. And this evening, the critical meeting. Tensions high as the president and China's leader hold a virtual summit. Trump ally Steve Bannon surrendering to the FBI to face charges for refusing to comply with the January 6th investigation. His defiant words. The shooting near a Colorado high school, multiple children injured. What we're learning, fears of a new COVID surge heading into the holidays. Cases rising in nearly half the U.S. and the major city joining several states, jumping ahead of the CDC to offer boosters to all adults. The terror blast at a UK hospital and the taxi driver hailed as a hero. The rising prices for your family's Thanksgiving meal, how to save. And the 13-year-old whose wish is inspiring America.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. 2 closing arguments today and 2 very different portraits of Kyle Rittenhouse as the homicide case is about to go to the jury, which will now have 1 less count to deliberate. The judge today dismissing the charge of illegal gun possession. The teenage gunman who killed 2 people and wounded another during a Wisconsin protest last year, described by the prosecution as having provoked the violent encounter and then walking off like a hero in a Western. The defense, however, arguing Rittenhouse had been ambushed and fired in self-defense. Tonight, authorities in Kenosha are on high alert as a tense verdict watch is about to begin. Gabe Gutierrez is there with the latest.
He is guilty of all counts.
Tonight, Kyle Rittenhouse's fate is about to be in the hands of the jury as closing arguments wrap up in his double homicide trial.
He showed no remorse for his victims, never tried to help anybody that he hurt.
The prosecutor replaying videos of the shootings from multiple angles, frame by frame, arguing that Rittenhouse shot and killed 2 men and wounded a third last August during unrest in Kenosha because he was a wannabe soldier looking for trouble.
When the defendant provokes the incident, he loses the right to self-defense. You cannot claim self-defense against a danger you create.
The defense zeroing in on Joseph Rosenbaum, the first man Rittenhouse shot, arguing he was belligerent and chased after Rittenhouse.
He was causing trouble. He was a rioter, and my client had to deal with him that night alone.
Rittenhouse's attorney insisting his client was not an active shooter and there was a rush to judgment.
Kyle was a 17-year-old kid out there trying to help this community.
Today, the judge dismissed the 6th count against Rittenhouse, illegal gun possession by a minor, a misdemeanor. Rittenhouse's attorneys argued the AR-15 style rifle was not short-barreled, so the Wisconsin law did not apply. He now faces 5 felony counts, including intentional homicide. The attorney for Gage Grosskreutz, the shooting survivor, says Rittenhouse created the carnage himself.
He fashioned himself as a self-deputized police officer who also was a medic. He didn't do anything medically for anybody.
When you hear your son referred to as a vigilante, what do you make of that?
It angers me.
Wendy Rittenhouse says she did not drive her son to Kenosha that night, but she has no doubt he acted in self-defense.
Was your son looking for trouble?
No. Kyle never looks for trouble. He is a caring young man, and he likes to help people.
As a mother, do you want him to go down there with an AR-15 rifle?
I didn't want him going anywhere near Kenosha whatsoever.
So, Gabe, where do things stand right now? Does the jury formally have the case?
Yeah, Lester, a short time ago, the prosecution just wrapped up its final rebuttal, and the judge in this case just told the jury to come back tomorrow morning to begin their deliberations. Lester?
Gabe Gutierrez in Kenosha, thank you. Late today, President Biden signed that $1 trillion infrastructure bill into law, calling it a historic investment. But in the midst of rising inflation, a new poll tonight shows the president's approval rating is suffering. Peter Alexander is at the White House.
President Biden tonight touting his biggest legislative victory to date.
Despite the cynics
Democrats and Republicans can come together and deliver results. We can do this.
Signing into law that trillion-dollar infrastructure bill surrounded by Democrats and a small number of Republicans. The largest federal investment in infrastructure in more than a decade will provide good-paying jobs, the White House says, directing $110 billion to upgrade roads and bridges, $65 billion to improve high-speed internet, and $15 billion to replace lead pipes in the country's drinking water system.
My message to the American people is this: America's moving again, and your life is going to change for the better.
Still, the celebration may be short-lived. The latest poll shows the president's approval rating continuing to drop, even after the infrastructure bill was passed, with Democrats still divided whether to spend another $1.75 trillion on his social program and climate plan, and as Americans' paychecks are stretched. Inflation soaring to a 31-year high, prices surging across the board, including gas jumping 50%, beef costing 20% more. Just today, Tyson Foods saying it's raised its beef, pork, and chicken prices because of escalating expenses. Kiana Cook in Maryland is struggling to pay the spiking costs.
Chuck Rose could feed my niece and her kids, and it's about like this, $35, $25. Just absolutely outrageous.
The Moser family in Pennsylvania also feeling the pinch.
Spending $100 a week in gas is very taxing.
Things that I would normally, spend maybe $1.50 to $2 on, I'm spending $3.75 on.
And another critical test for the president late tonight, a virtual summit with China's President Xi. White House officials already lowering expectations for the meeting, saying not to expect any concrete outcomes, but that President Biden will tell Xi he, quote, expects him to play by the rules of the road and will confront the Chinese leader on Beijing's unfair economic practices, its poor human rights record, and threats toward Taiwan.
And Peter, let's circle back to that infrastructure law. How does the president now tout it to the American people?
Yeah, Lester, President Biden will head to New Hampshire tomorrow and then the next day to Michigan. Meanwhile, Democrats will have to go it alone to pass his climate and social policy plans, with inflation now complicating their efforts to get some moderates to back that kind of massive new spending. Lester?
Peter Alexander at the White House. Thanks. Tonight, the State Department is calling a Russian missile test in space reckless and irresponsible. That missile targeted an old Russian satellite, producing debris that threatens Americans and others on board the International Space Station. Andrea Mitchell is here now. Andrea, how is the U.S. responding to this?
Lester, they're furious. Tonight, the Secretary of State and the NASA administrator both slamming Russia for what they call a reckless anti-satellite weapons test, saying it had spread a cloud of hundreds of thousands of pieces of space debris smaller than 3 inches and thousands of larger pieces that will remain in orbit and threaten satellites and space missions for years. Already, the astronauts and cosmonauts in the International Space Station have been ordered to shelter in their docking capsules when they spot debris. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson telling me tonight it is unconscionable and unbelievable that Russia has endangered its own cosmonauts. Secretary Blinken says the U.S. will now work with its allies on a response. Lester?
Andrea Mitchell, thank you. Steve Bannon, once a top advisor to former President Trump, appeared in court today after being charged with contempt of Congress for failing to appear before the committee investigating the Capitol riot. Pete Williams has that story.
Steve Bannon turned himself into the FBI this morning, mobbed by cameras, his escorts clearing a path.
Excuse me.
One of those cameras was actually his, live streaming on his social media site.
We got the Hispanics coming on our side, African Americans coming on our side. We're taking down the Biden regime.
His more immediate challenge is a federal grand jury indictment, 2 counts charging contempt of Congress for refusing to produce documents or show up for questioning by the House committee investigating the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol. During a brief hearing in federal court, he was formally advised of the charges, released, and will enter a plea Thursday. Outside the courthouse, a defiant Bannon said he'll fight the charges, which he called politically motivated.
I'm telling you right now, this is going to be the misdemeanor from hell for Merrick Garland, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden.
Bannon is the only former Trump White House aide subpoenaed who has totally refused to cooperate because the former president asserted executive privilege. 15 others have been subpoenaed.
If they're willing to talk to the committee about non-privileged matters, if they're willing to negotiate with the committee rather than just make a blanket assertion of privilege, they don't really have anything to fear. They won't be charged.
It's clear tonight that Bannon will argue that he was simply following the advice of his lawyers when he declined to even show up to answer the committee's questions. And in some past contempt cases, that defense has been successful. Lester?
All right, Pete, thank you. We're following a developing story tonight in Colorado where police say 6 teenagers were shot and wounded in Aurora, just outside Denver. It happened in a park near a high school. All 6 of the teens are students at the school and are expected to survive. The school was placed on lockdown. Police looking for multiple suspects who fired from a car and on foot. Tonight, growing concern about the pandemic with new COVID cases rising in almost 24 states. Many see it as a clear sign of a winter surge. Now, several states and New York City are offering boosters to all adults ahead of FDA and CDC authorization. Here's Miguel Almaguer.
Just as many Americans count down the days to holiday gatherings, COVID cases are shooting up across much of the nation. The intersection of holiday travel and an ominous winter surge set to soon collide. Tonight, in nearly half the country, new infections are on the rise. In 6 states, the increase is over 40% in just the last 2 weeks. Minnesota with the largest spike.
I'm worried that people are going to die and they never had a chance at getting a bed.
Doctors in Minnesota are facing their most crushing increase in new infections since last winter.
The patients, they're waiting too long to be seen. They're very sick. And every day it's a fight to try to find where is this sick patient going to go?
Fearing a return to COVID patients in hallways and at field hospitals, New York City joins California, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arkansas, offering booster shots to all adults before the FDA and CDC has authorized them.
Providers should not turn a patient away if they request a booster.
As our nation now averages more than 1,000 deaths a day, authorities are trying to prevent new hospitalizations amid a jumbled booster rollout.
Whenever you have this level of confusion, people tend to have a negative reaction, and you might turn away people who really do need to receive a booster shot with a well-intended but confusing rollout.
In Colorado, where beds are scarce, stage 4 cancer patient Bob Sampson says doctors have delayed his life-saving surgery because hospitals are overwhelmed.
I'm in this to survive and extend life. I mean, I'm really healthy other than this tumor being inside me. And let's get on with it.
Tonight, the continuing cost of COVID for all Americans facing a resurging pandemic.
And Miguel, we heard Dr. Patel mention confusion, and people are seeing all adults in states like California line up for boosters. When will they be authorized for more people nationwide?
Well, Lester, the FDA is expected to take up the matter in just a few days. That'll be followed by a CDC review. Experts tell us they expect boosters for all American adults will be available by the end of this month nationwide. Lester.
All right, Miguel Almaguer tonight. Thank you. In just 60 seconds, the high alert after a taxi cab exploded in the UK. We'll tell you why the driver is now being hailed as a hero. And with prices going up, how to save as you plan to shop for your Thanksgiving dinner. Stunning images tonight from a terror attack in the UK. A bomb exploding inside a taxi in front of a hospital. The cab driver survived and is being called a hero tonight for locking the car's doors to keep the terror suspect from getting out. Kevin Tibbles now with late details.
Tonight, British authorities saying this was an act of terror. Surveillance cameras capturing a massive blast outside the Liverpool Women's Hospital Sunday. A taxi cab carrying a passenger loaded down with explosives blew up and was quickly engulfed in flames.
It has been declared a terrorist incident, and counter-terrorism policing are continuing with the investigation.
Police have not released any suspected motive, but tonight the cabbie, David Perry, is being hailed a hero by Liverpool's mayor. Perry apparently locked the suspect in the car, limiting the impact of the explosion, somehow managing to escape himself after the blast. Perry's wife reportedly saying in a private Facebook post, "It is an utter miracle he survived, and that guardian angels were looking over him." Prime Minister Boris Johnson, raising the terror threat level, said Britons will stand strong.
We will never give in to those who seek to divide us with senseless acts of violence.
The suspect was killed in the explosion. Tonight named as 32-year-old Imad al-Sualmin. This is the second suspected act of terrorism here in a month. And tonight, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is urging the public to remain vigilant. Lester?
Kevin Tibbles tonight. Thanks. In Houston, the toll from that Astroworld concert chaos has risen again. 9-year-old Ezra Blount is now the 10th and youngest victim to die. Ezra was sitting on his dad's shoulders when his father passed out in the crowd surge. Ezra's family later found him at the hospital with injuries so severe he was placed in a medically induced coma. We'll turn now to the price you pay. Could this year's Thanksgiving dinner be the most expensive ever for your family? Jolene Kent with some ways to save.
For millions gathering for the first in-person Thanksgiving in 2 years, be prepared to pay up. Thanks in part to a labor shortage in the supply chain, the retail price of turkeys is up 9 cents a pound compared to last year. The other reasons, the higher cost of corn to feed those turkeys and inflation.
What we're finding is that people in anticipation of perceived shortages is that they're rushing out to buy turkeys now. Our sales on turkeys were up 100% versus the same week year ago last week.
Grocery chain H-E-B says customers should be flexible.
What can shoppers expect to be in tight supply or delayed?
I think one of the areas that we're seeing right now is in pumpkin pie mix, is that not that we don't have it, but we may find that the shipping from a manufacturer to our stores is a day or two behind. But on the other hand, there are going to probably be 6 or 7 other brands that you can choose from.
Canned cranberry sauce is pricier because it's more expensive to produce steel cans and trucking costs are up. Packaged dinner rolls are more expensive because the price of some ingredients spiked. Bakeries like Republic of Pie ordered their flour months ago and were still forced to hike their prices by $1.75 a pie.
Naturally, we have to go up a little bit in price. We go up incrementally as much as we can without trying to shake and stir the restaurant and our customers.
Even pie boxes are in short supply.
I was told that they're not going to have for the rest of the month.
To stay on budget and get what you need, experts say buy frozen options and generic brands. And if you're celebrating as a group, truly share the costs. Don't leave the host solely on the hook. Jolene Kent, NBC News, North Hollywood, California.
Up next for us tonight, the consumer alert you need to hear, especially if you or a loved one is using older electronic devices. Back now with an alert you need to hear if you're one of the millions of Americans who still has a 3G cell phone. As wireless networks switch to faster 5G service, 3G networks will soon be shut down. Jacob Ward now with what you should know.
The year 2022 has a futuristic ring to it, but it's the end of the line for millions of wireless devices. Third generation or 3G phones will soon stop working as wireless companies disconnect them. Why? Well, because the companies only have a certain number of frequencies they can use to connect us, and getting rid of old phones frees up valuable airwaves to connect more expensive ones.
The people that are going to be the most impacted by this are going to be the low income, the elderly, and then people that live in those areas that do not have access to 4 or 5G, because there's no easy path to an upgrade for them. They might not be able to afford an upgrade to a 4G or a 5G phone. And that's even saying if 4 or 5G is available in their area.
Boost Mobile, which sells some of the cheapest plans out there, says more than 1 million customers could lose out and is pressing former owner T-Mobile to extend service.
Are you okay?
Some medical alert devices for seniors will also stop transmitting.
Emergency call center.
And that's it for certain roadside assistance systems in older cars from companies like Toyota and Audi. If you rely on an older home security system, medical device, or phone, check in with the manufacturer to make sure it's not going to be disconnected next year.
Some companies are offering free or discounted upgrades for older devices, but you should probably reach out because while your connection may be interrupted, your billing probably won't. Lester?
Some really important information there, Jacob. Thank you. Up next, how one 13-year-old boy's wish is feeding hundreds, and it's inspiring America. Finally, the boy who got to make a wish and decided what he really wanted was to help others. Here's Kerry Sanders.
13-year-old Abraham Olagregi knows he's different, but he thought it was because he was diagnosed with sometimes fatal aplastic anemia. But that's not what makes Abraham unique. Make-A-Wish said he could go to Disney, get a PlayStation, have a 21-speed bike. Instead, you decided to what?
Feed the homeless.
Why?
You know, like a PlayStation would be nice, but to me, I just feel like it wouldn't do the justice, like all the pain and stuff I went through. So I just felt like it would have been right to just feed the homeless and just to give back.
Mom, what do you think here?
It overwhelms me. It just gives me so much joy.
A stranger donated life-saving bone marrow. Doctors say Abraham's now on his way to full recovery. Since he was 9, Abraham has joined his parents and 9 brothers and sisters feeding the homeless in Jackson, Mississippi. The Make-A-Wish gift will allow him to plate 700 meals for the next 8 months. It's not every day a 13-year-old teaches us a lesson.
Most of the homeless people, you know, they had good childhoods. And you just don't know, one day you could be homeless. Before you put your nose in somebody else's business, put your heart in their place first.
Kerry Sanders, NBC News.
How does that not give you hope, huh? That's Nightly News for this Monday. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.